Hi there, my name's Caitlin Bandy and this is my channel Bandy's Books, and today Luna and I are here to talk October TBRs. So if you've been following my channel for a while, you'll know that every single month I pick out like a theme or a genre or something specific, and then I pick out a bunch of books for my TBR for the month within that theme or genre. So because October is the month when Halloween occurs, I usually will pick out mostly horror, thrillers, maybe a little sprinkle of sci-fi for the month of October, and that is once again the case. I look forward to October as a reading month all year long because I enjoy it so much. It's just a lot of good fun. But before we dive into the books that I have on my TBR this month, if you could do me a favor and hit the like button, comment down below and let me know what you're looking forward to reading in October. Do you have any specific books picked out? Are there any horror releases that you're excited about? What are you thinking about reading? And if you're not already subscribed to the channel, you know what to do. Hit the subscribe button down below as well, so that way we can see each other again real soon. So now let's jump into the books. So as per usual, I have way too many books picked out, and you're probably gonna like watch this video and be like, Caitlin, there's no way that you're gonna ever read all of those books in 1 month. And you would be absolutely correct. I usually will pick out more books than I think I can actually read to give myself a little bit of space to mood read within my selections. I've found that that helps me to be really successful with these TBRs and gives me a little bit of freedom to read as I enjoy. So first up, I have something of a horror classic. It is one that I have not read, but I feel like almost everybody has. And if you've been following the channel for a while, you'll know that I don't have the best relationship with classics. So I wanted to give this one a try. I found it in a little free library on my trip across the Southwest. And that is We've Always Lived in the Castle by Shirley Jackson. I have never read a Shirley Jackson book before, but I am honestly obsessed with the cover design on this book. I think it is just so cool and so creepy. Even like the inner flaps have this thing going on. I'm very excited about this. It says, my name is Mary Catherine Blackwood. I'm 18 years old and I live with my sister Constance. I have often thought that with any luck at all, I could have been born a werewolf because the two middle fingers on both my hands are the same length, but I have had to be content with what I had. I dislike washing myself and dogs and noise. I like my sister Constance and Richard Plantagenet and Amanita phalloides, the death cup mushroom. Everyone else in my family is dead. So hopefully this will be a book that I really enjoy. Maybe this will be a game changer for me in terms of classics. Then I have two books in a series that I picked up on a recent road trip to Pasadena. This is a video I'm hoping to post on the channel very soon, but my mom and I did this really cool bookish road trip to Pasadena to check out some bookstores in the area. And in one of the bookshops, I had the recommendation for the Black Dawn series. This was a series I'm not familiar with, an author I'm not familiar with, but the way that it was described to me sounded fantastic. Dune's mother is patient zero of a mystery illness that stops people in their tracks, in mid-sentence, mid-action, midlife, casting them into a non-responsive state from which no one recovers. Dune must navigate poverty and the loss of her mother as Detroit's hospitals, morgues, and graveyards begin to overflow. As the quarantined city slowly empties of life, she investigates what caused the plague and what might end it. I love a good plague story, and I was told that this plague is very unique in this particular story, so I'm really excited to give this a try. And then I have The Ballad of Black Tom by Victor Lavalle. So last year I read The Changeling by Victor Lavalle, which I absolutely loved. Then I read his book Lone Women, and I enjoyed it, but it wasn't my favorite. I think it's just that Western setting for me is not my favorite. But I've heard that The Ballad of Black Tom is his possibly best work. My mom recently read it, and I had asked her if she wouldn't mind sending me her copy when she was finished, and so here I have it. Charles Thomas Tester hustles to put food on the table, to keep the roof over his father's head from Harlem to Flushing Meadows to Red Hook. He knows what magic a suit can cast, the invisibility a guitar case can provide, and the curse written on his skin that attracts the eyes of wealthy white folks and their cops. But when he delivers an occult book to a reclusive sorceress in the heart of Queens, Tom opens a door to a deeper realm of magic and earns the attention of things best left sleeping. This sounds fantastic. Again, I really enjoy Victor Lavalle's writing. Even the books of his that are not my favorite are still really interesting and unique, so I'm sure to have a good time with this one. Then going towards the science fiction genre, I have Station Eternity by Maree Lafferty. This is from the Midsolar Murders, and this was a book that was recommended to me in Colorado. I have a road trip vlog up here, but basically the person that sold this book to me said it was science fiction, but really quirky and kind of interesting. It says, amateur detective Mallory Veridian's talent for solving murders ruined her life on Earth and drove her to live on an alien space station. But her problems still follow her in this witty, self-aware novel that puts a speculative spin on murder mysteries from the Hugo Award-nominated author of Six Wakes. So I'm very excited to check this out. The reviews of it really piqued my interest. I love a good science fiction, especially one that kind of is a little bit speculative and maybe breaks some of the genre norms. I'm really looking forward to getting into this. Then a book that I am really excited about, and also another book that I found on this Pasadena road trip. So during this Pasadena road trip, we took a little segue into Los Angeles to go to the Lost Bookstore. And man, that place is magical. I can't wait for you guys to see the footage of it. It's one of the coolest bookstores I've ever been in. And while I was there, I found a book that I was very excited about, and that is Chouette by Claire Oshetsky. This is a book that I have seen occasionally pop up on social media, and I don't know what it is, but the cover just draws me in so much. But then the description gets even better. Teeny is pregnant. Her husband is delighted. You think the baby is going to be like you, but it's not like you at all, she warns him. The baby is an owl baby. When Chouette is born, small and broken-winged, Tiny works around the clock to meet her daughter's needs. Left on her own to care for a child who seems more predatory bird than baby, Tiny vows to raise Chouette to be her authentic self, even in those times when Chouette's behaviors grow violent and strange. I love this concept of an owl baby. I can't wait to see what this book is about. And then I feel like my horror TBR wouldn't be complete if I didn't have a T. Kingfisher book on there. So I'm going to be checking out Nettle and Bone for the first time. This is the book by T. Kingfisher that I honestly probably hear the most rave reviews about. So I have read a couple books by Kingfisher now. I read House with Good Bones, I think it was called, and I enjoyed that one. I thought it was fun. And then I read another of her books, which I can't remember the name of off the top of my head at the moment, but it was like a fantasy novella, and I didn't really enjoy it. I thought it was like overly simplistic and just not enough meat. So this is pretty short, and I think this has kind of a fairy tale vibe. So I'm hoping that this is one that's going to work for me. This isn't the kind of fairy tale where the princess marries a prince. It's the one where she kills him. So that little description there sounds promising to me. I'm hoping that this lives up to the hype because, again, this is probably the one that I see get recommended the most. And then I have a book by Kristin Hannah. So I have read pretty much all of Kristin Hannah's most current releases, and I like a lot of them. There's some that didn't work that well for me, but recently I found a copy of one of her older books, which is called Magic. I was even more surprised to find that this looks to be a thriller. In the rugged Pacific Northwest lies the Olympic National Forest, nearly 1 million acres of impenetrable darkness and impossible beauty. From deep within this old-growth forest, a 6-year-old girl appears, speechless and alone. She offers no clue as to her identity, no hint of her past. Having retreated to her Western Washington home after a scandal left her career in ruins, child psychiatrist Dr. Julia Cates is determined to free the extraordinary little girl that she calls Alice from a prison of unimaginable fear and isolation. To reach her, Julia must discover the truth about Alice's past. Sounds really interesting. Like I said, typically I think Kristin Hannah writes a pretty decent book. I loved The Nightingale. I enjoyed The Four Winds. I really enjoyed her book, The Women. I hated The Great Alone, but generally, I think her books work for me, so I'm hoping this one will too. Then I have a book by an author who is really well loved in the thriller genre, someone that has been sitting on my bookshelf for a really long time and I haven't really got around to because I've just not been reading a lot of thrillers, but I think I'm going to finally do it this year. I'm going to read Tana French, and in particular, I'm going to be reading In the Woods. This says, as dusk approaches a small Dublin suburb in the summer of 1984, mothers begin to call their children home. But on this warm evening, 3 children do not return from the dark and silent woods. When the police arrive, they find only one of the children gripping a tree trunk in terror, wearing blood-filled sneakers, and unable to recall a single detail of the previous hours. I have heard very good things about this particular book and about Tana French's writing in general, so I am very excited to give this a try. I would love to find a thriller author that really vibes with me. And continuing along in really famous authors, I have The Heart Goes Last by Margaret Atwood. This was recently recommended to me by Buffy's Book Boutique. I have a shopping blog up here. They are the newest bookstore in the Las Vegas area, so you should definitely check them out. This says, Stan and Charmaine, a young urban couple, have been hit by job loss and bankruptcy in the midst of nationwide economic collapse. Forced to live in their third-hand Honda, where they are vulnerable to roving gangs, they think The gated community of conciliants might be the answer to their prayers. If they sign a life contract, they'll get a job and a lovely house for 6 months of the year. On alternating months, residents must leave their homes and serve as inmates in the positron prison system. At first, this seems worth it. They will have a roof over their heads and food on the table. But when a series of troubling events unfolds, positron begins to look less like a prayer answered and more like a chilling prophecy fulfilled. So this sounds really interesting. I do have a hit or miss type of relationship with Atwood's writing. I really enjoyed The Handmaid's Tale, but I tried Oryx and Crake and I hated it. So it'll be interesting to see how I feel about this one. Next up, I have a book by an author that I really enjoy. This is a horror novella, and I had read their previous horror novella. So I was excited when I found out that this had just released, and that is The Woods All Black by Lee Mandela. So in June, I was home for my birthday, and I did like this epic bookstore crawl across San Diego. I went to 9 different bookstores, and of course, I had to stop at Mysterious Galaxy because it's one of my favorites, and they gave me some really great horror recommendations, this being one of them. Leslie Bruin is assigned to the backwoods township of Spar Creek by the Frontier Nursing Service under its usual mandate: vaccinate the flock, birth babies, and weather the judgment of churchy locals who look at him and see a failed woman. Forged in the fires of the Western Front and reborn in the cafes of Paris, Leslie believes he can handle whatever is thrown at him, but Spar Creek holds darkness beyond his nightmares. I'm very much looking forward to this. I really enjoy Mandela's horror novellas, and this is a short read, so I should burn through this pretty quickly. And then another horror recommendation from Mysterious Galaxy in San Diego is Saturnalia by Stephanie Feldman. First of all, I love the cover of this book. I think it's just so creepy and cool. So this says, the Saturnalia Carnival marks 3 years since Nina walked away from Philadelphia's elite Saturn Club. With its genteel debauchery, arcane pecking order, and winking interest in alchemy and the occult. In doing so, she abandoned her closest friends and her chance to climb the social ladder. Since then, she's eked out a living by telling fortunes with her Saturn Club tarot deck, a solemn initiation gift that Nina has always considered a gag, but has turned out to be more useful than she could have ever imagined. For most, the Saturnalia Carnival marks a brief winter reprieve from the beleaguered people of the historic city, which is being eroded by extreme weather, a collapsing economy, and feverish summers, whose disease-carrying mosquitoes are perhaps the only thing one can count on. Like Thanksgiving or Halloween, Saturnalia has become a purely American holiday, despite its pagan roots, and nearly everyone, rich or poor, forgets their troubles for a moment. For Nina, Saturnalia is simply a cruel reminder of the night that changed everything for her. But when she gets a chance call from Max, one of the Saturn Club's best connected members and her last remaining friend, the favor he asks will plunge her back into the club's wild solstice masquerade on a mysterious errand that she cannot say no to. So this sounds really interesting. This is definitely a book I would not have found without a bookseller pointing it out. And this is why I love going to indie bookstores so much. It gives me a chance to talk with booksellers and find things that are maybe a little bit off the beaten path. Really looking forward to this. And then I have a short story horror anthology that I picked up on my trip across the Southwest, and that is Out There Screaming by Jordan Peele. Instead of reading you the interior flap on this, I'm just going to read you the list of authors involved. We have N.K. Jemisin, Rebecca Roanhorse, Cadwell Turnbull, Tananarive Dew, Nnedi Okorafor, Peta Jelly Clark, Tochi Onyebuchi. So many authors that I absolutely adore. So I have a book up here on the top of my shelf by Tochi Onyebuchi. I have books over here by Tananarive Dew. Like, there is a bunch of people within this book that I'm so excited to read from. And then I have Jackal by Erin E. Adams. This is a book that's been on my shelf for quite a while. I've had it on other TBRs. I keep meaning to get to it. I think this year we're finally going to do it. So this says, a young black girl goes missing in the woods outside her white Rust Belt town, but she's not the first and she may not be the last. I think this is going to have those thriller vibes. I haven't really heard that many reviews of this, but I'm hoping that this will be a really good read. Again, I kind of struggle with the thriller genre, which is why I don't gravitate to it too much, but hopefully out of all the thrillers that are in this stack, maybe a few of them will be enjoyable for me. And moving forward, I have Within These Wicked Walls by Lauren Blackwood. This was a Reese's YA book club pick. This was all over Instagram a while back. I remember being really drawn in by the cover initially, but the summary sounds really good as well. Andromeda is a Debtera, an exorcist hired to cleanse households of the evil eye. She would be hired, that is, if her mentor hadn't thrown her out before she could earn her license. Now her only hope of steady work is to find a patron, a rich, well-connected individual who will vouch for her abilities. When a handsome young heir named Magnus Rochester reaches out to hire her, Andromeda takes the job without question. Never mind that he's rude, demanding, and eccentric, that the contract comes with a number of outlandish rules, and that almost a dozen Deptera had quit before her. If Andromeda wants to earn a living, she has no choice, but she quickly realizes this is a job like no other, with horrifying manifestations at every turn, and that Magnus is hiding far more than she has been trained for. Death is most likely outcome if she stays, and the reason every Deptera before her has quit. Leaving Magnus to live out his curse alone isn't an option, because heaven help her, she's fallen for him. So we have YA horror with a sprinkle of romance. I am personally not a huge romance reader, so we're gonna see how this one goes. It may not be for me, but I may be surprised and really enjoy it. I do occasionally like to mix in some YA, so we'll see. And then I have Penpal by Dathan Auerbach. This was a book that my mom read a while back and said was kind of creepy, so I asked her if I could borrow it. So this says, in an attempt to make sense of his own mysterious and unsettling childhood memories, a man begins to reconstruct his past. As the games and adventures of his youth become engulfed by a larger story, he finds that it forms a tapestry of unbelievable horror that he never could have expected. Each chapter completes a different piece of the puzzle for both you and the narrator, and by the end of it all, you will wish that you could forget what he never knew. Sounds really interesting. I think this is a very unique approach to the horror genre. I'm looking forward to getting into this. And then I have Casting Shadows by Dziyanna Taylor. This says, for 2 years, Rebecca Grimwood has been plagued by the same dream: an overturned ambulance vehicle, a long winding road, a motorcycle, and a man whose face she can't make out. Dreams are just dreams though, and she tries not to pay them much notice. Yet when a fortune teller tells her that her destiny involves a sacrifice, Rebecca seeks the answers that she didn't know she needed. To find them, she returns to the beginning, her old hometown of Harpers Ferry, West Virginia. So this was a book that I was sent by Zenith Publishing. This is an indie press, and this is not an author I'm familiar with, but it sounds really interesting, and I, again, really like those creepy vibes that are going on here. Then my second classic in this TBR, 2 in 1 month, What Am I Thinking? The Plague by Albert Camus. This is a book that's been on my shelf for a really long time, one that I've been meaning to read, and I feel like October is the perfect time to do it. This is a gripping tale of unrelieved horror, of survival and resilience, and of the ways in which humankind confront death. And then I have The Butterfly House by Katrine Enberg. So in my very first video on my YouTube, way back when, I did a TBR for October, and I had gone to my local bookstore, the Writer's Block, and I picked out a whole bunch of horror books. Most of them were just like whatever was on the horror display at the time, because I didn't really have my thumb on the pulse of like contemporary writing and what was popular and exciting. So this was a book that I ended up picking up without knowing really anything about it. I was mostly honestly drawn into the cover because of all the bright colors. It says, in the coronary care unit at one of Copenhagen's leading medical centers, a nurse fills a syringe with an overdose of heart medication and enters the room of a patient. 5 days earlier, a paperboy on his route stumbles upon a macabre find: the naked body of a dead woman, her arms marked with small incisions. Cause of death, exsanguination, the draining of all the blood in her body. Clearly, this is no ordinary murder. Lead investigator Jepp Corner, recovering from a painful divorce, takes on the case. His partner, Annette Warner, now on maternity leave, is restless at home with a demanding newborn and an equally demanding husband. While Jepp looks for answers, Annette decides to do a little freelance sleuthing, but operating on her own exposes her to dangers that she can't even begin to fathom. Sounds really interesting. This is, I believe, the start of a series. So if I enjoy this book, I may consider getting the next one in the series. And then another book that was recommended to me by an indie bookstore, one that I probably would not have come across without a recommendation, is A Bitter Root by Susie Vitello. So this was recommended to me because this is by a semi-indie press, and they focus on publishing books by female authors specifically, and they usually have complex themes, current events, things like that. This one says, a forensic artist confronts a crime against her own family while MAGA politics, racism, and violence rage in a small town in Bitterroot Mountains of Idaho. So it sounds really interesting to me. I love a book that mixes in like current events and strong themes with horror. In this particular case, this sounds like it's right up my alley. And then I have a book by an author that I have thus far really struggled with, despite trying several of their books and really wanting to like them. I think that this is going to be my last shot at their writing. If this one doesn't go well for me, I've given up on them completely. And that author is Holly Black, and the book is The Coldest Girl in Cold Town. So hear me out. I tried the book The Cruel Prince because I saw that series popping up everywhere on social media, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, you name it, everybody raves about it. Personally, for me, I hated it. I really dislike when people use the enemies to lovers trope and basically make it abuse, right? So that's what my problem was with The Cruel Prince, is that the young man in the scenario was an abusive jerk to the young woman in the scenario. And then as the story progresses, they write this like romance arc and, oh, he had trauma. It's so understandable that he was an abusive asshole to this woman all this time. And she now forgives him because she knows about his trauma. I hate that. That's like the worst thing. It automatically will turn me off of a book. So the Cruel Prince series, not for me. Then I tried The Book of Night by Holly Black. And that was okay. There was nothing I hated about it, but it's super unremarkable. It was very bland. It was like eating plain spaghetti with no sauce. It just was like, you know, I guess you ate something, but did you enjoy it? Not really. So I'm hoping that this is going to be the book that redeems Holly Black for me, because she seems to be such a popular author. Says, Tanya lives in a world where walled cities called cold towns exist. In them, quarantined monsters and humans mingle in a decadently bloody mix of predator and prey. And once you pass through Cold Town's gates, you can never leave. One morning, after a perfectly ordinary party, Tana wakes up surrounded by corpses. The only other survivors of this massacre are her exasperatingly endearing ex-boyfriend, infected and on the edge, and a mysterious boy burdened with a terrible secret. Shaken and determined, Tana enters a race against the clock to save the three of them the only way she knows how, by going straight to the wicked, opulent heart of Cold Town itself. So this sounds really interesting. I feel like this is a promising read. Next up, I have a couple books from Aardvark. Both of them I'm really excited about. First, I Was a Teenage Slasher by Stephen Graham Jones. So I've heard some mixed reviews of this, but typically I find the negative reviews of this particular book are by people that generally don't like this style of writing. I happen to really enjoy Graham Jones's writing. I have read several of his books before and I found them really interesting, so I'm super hyped for this one. La Mesa, Texas, July 1989. It's the summer before senior year for best friends Tolly Driver and Amber Dennison. They're not in the marching band, they're not in the FFA, they don't really count. Amber's the only native student in town and Tolly is only on the radar due to his father's recent death. That is all about to change. Bodies are going to be dropping fast in this small West Texas town. For a few unbearably hot days that will resonate through the decades and even get made into a TV movie, Tolly and Amber will be famous, notorious even. Finally, everyone will know their names. I'm really excited about this. I feel like this is like the setup for many of the horror movies that I grew up watching, and I really hope that I enjoy this book. And then also from Aardvark, I have Their Eyes Were the Best Part by Monica Kim. So I've been hearing really good things about this book. This cover has me shook. This was the whole reason that I bought this book. I'm just obsessed. So this says, Ji-won's life tumbles into disarray in the wake of her appa's extramarital affair and subsequent departure. Her mother's distraught. Her younger sister is hurt and confused. Her college freshman grades are failing. Her dreams are horrifying, yet enticing. In them, Ji-won walks through bloody rooms full of eyes. Succulent blue eyes, salivating blue eyes. Eyes the same shape and shade as George's, who is Uma's obnoxious new boyfriend. He brags about his puffed-up consulting job, ogles Asian waitresses while dining out, and acts condescendingly towards Ji-won and her sister, as if he deserves all of Uma's fawning adoration. But George doesn't deserve anything from her family. Ji-won will make sure of that. I'm really excited. This might be the first thing that I read in October. This is probably my most hyped book on this TBR so far. After that, I have The Wicked Deep by Shea Earnshaw. So I have read quite a bit of Earnshaw's writing, and I have like one or two more books before I've read her entire backlist, this being one of the last ones. This says, 2 centuries ago, 3 sisters were sentenced to death for witchery. Stones were tied to their ankles and they were drowned in the deep waters surrounding the town. Now for a brief time each summer, the sisters return, stealing the bodies of 3 troubled girls so that they may seek their revenge, luring boys into Sparrow's Harbor and pulling them under. Like many locals, 17-year-old Penny Talbot has accepted the fate of the town. But this year, on the eve of the sisters' return, a boy named Beau Carter arrives, unaware of the danger that he has just stumbled into. Mistrust and lies spread quickly through the salty, rain-soaked streets. The townspeople will turn against one another. Penny and Beau will suspect the other of hiding secrets, and death will come swiftly to those who cannot resist the call of the sisters. So this sounds like a lot of fun. Also, again, great for October. It's got those witchy vibes that are perfect for the fall. We're about halfway through this stack, so hang on tight. We're gonna be moving fast. Next up, we have The Boneless Mercies by April Genevieve Chucholk. So this is another book that I picked up on that epic road trip from Pasadena and Los Angeles. That video hopefully will be coming out soon. I picked this up Shirley as a cover buy. Honestly, the cover is fantastic, but the description is also really interesting. Frey yearns for a life worthy of saga and song, but she is a boneless mercy, a member of an ancient female sect that has survived the rising and falling of kingdoms. Mercies are death traders, doomed to roam Vor's land, killing the old and the sick for meager pay. Their methods are quiet, even merciful, yet wherever their work leads them, their daggers inspire unease. Frey and her band of mercies, Ovi, Runa, and Juniper, are weary of the death trade and dream of a bigger life. So when Frey hears that a beast is slaughtering people in a northern jarldom, she decides that slaying the creature is the mercy's chance at fame and fortune, even if it means they must align with the reclusive sea witches and face the ruthless cut queen of the Red Willow Marsh. Sounds really interesting. This definitely has Caitlin written all over it. I'm very excited to check it out. This is also an author I wasn't familiar with, a book I'd never heard of, so hopefully it'll be a nice surprise. Then I have a book by an author whose first book I really enjoyed, and so I'm hopeful that book number 2 will be good. That's The Whispers by Ashley Audrain. So I love The Push. That was such a friggin' creepy book, and I am hoping that The Whispers really just chills me to my core. On Harlow Street, the well-to-do neighborhood couples and their children gather for a barbecue as the summer winds down. Everything is fabulous until Whitney, the picture-perfect hostess, explodes in fury because her son disobeys her. Everyone at the party hears her exquisite veneer crack, loud and clear. Before long, that same young boy falls from his bedside window in the middle of the night, and then his mother can only sit by her son's hospital bed, where his life hangs in the balance. This sounds interesting, but honestly, I haven't heard very many reviews of this. When The Push was out, I feel like everyone was talking about it everywhere, so it makes me a little bit nervous that this one's been a little quieter. Then some recent book of the month picks. So first, I got Hum by Helen Phillips. This is a sci-fi novel, and it sounds so interesting. So, in a near future world addled by climate change and inhabited by intelligent robots called Hums, May loses her job to artificial intelligence. Desperate to resolve her family's debt and secure their future for another few months, she becomes a guinea pig in an experiment that alters her face so it cannot be recognized by surveillance. Seeking reprieve from her recent hardships and her family's addiction to their devices, she splurges on passes that allow them 3 nights respite inside the Botanical Garden, a rare green refuge where forest streams and animals flourish. But when her children come under threat, May is forced to put her trust in a Hum of uncertain motives to save her family. So this book sounds fantastic to me, and it also says that this author has been longlisted for the National Book Award, which, you know, is also very promising. I love a good sci-fi, and then mix it with that thriller aspect. I hope that this is gonna have me at the edge of my seat. Then another book of the month pick, I have Middle Tide by Sarah Crouch. So this says, in this gripping and intensely atmospheric debut, disquiet descends on a small town after the suspicious death of a beautiful young doctor, with all clues pointing to the reclusive young man who abandoned the community in chase of big city dreams, but returned for the first love that he left behind. I've been hearing pretty good reviews of this one, and I am very much looking forward to checking it out. All right, so we're very close to the end here. So next up we have Saint X by Alexis Scheitkin. This says, Claire Thomas is only 7 years old when her college-age sister Allison disappears on the last night of their family vacation at a resort on the Caribbean island of Saint X. Several days later, Allison's body is found in a remote spot on a nearby quay, and 2 local men, employees at the resort, are arrested. But the evidence is slim, the timeline against it, and the men are soon released. The story turns into national tabloid news, a lurid mystery that will go unsolved. For Claire and her parents, there is only the return home to broken lives. Years later, Claire is living and working in New York City when a brief but fateful encounter brings her together with Clive Richardson, one of the men originally suspected of murdering her sister. It is a moment that sets Claire on an obsessive pursuit of the truth, not only to find out what happened the night of Allison's death, but also to answer the elusive question, who exactly was her sister? I haven't heard too many reviews of this book, but it sounds really interesting, and let's be real, I wish I was on a Caribbean island right now, so I'm happy to read about one. And then I have Once Upon a River by Diane Setterfield. So this is a book that's been on my shelf for a very long time, and I'm hoping to finally move it off. This says, on a dark midwinter's night in an ancient inn on the River Thames, an extraordinary event takes place. The regulars are telling stories to while away dark hours when the door bursts open on a grievously wounded stranger. In his arms is the body of a small child. Hours later, the girl stirs, takes a breath, and returns to life. Is it a miracle? Is it magic? Or can science provide an explanation? These questions have many answers, some of them quite dark indeed. So this sounds really interesting as well. I feel like this has like that dark fairy tale aspect to it. I'm really interested in checking this out. This is not an author I've read before. This isn't a book that I've heard a whole lot about. If this is a book that you've read and you know about, please let me know in the comments what I should expect. Then I have The Immortalist by Chloe Benjamin. This has been on my TBR several times over and I keep meaning to get to it, so I'm hoping to make this the year that I finally knock it off the shelf. It's 1969 in New York City's Lower East Side, and word has spread of the arrival of a mystical woman, a traveling psychic who claims to be able to tell anyone the day that they will die. The Gould children, 4 adolescents on the cusp of self-awareness, sneak out to hear their fortunes. The prophecies inform their next 5 decades. Golden boy Simon escapes the West Coast, searching for love in 80s San Francisco. Dreamy Clara becomes a Las Vegas magician, obsessed with blurring reality and fantasy. Eldest son Daniel struggles to maintain security as an army doctor post 9/11. And bookish Varia throws herself into longevity research where she tests the boundary between science and immortality. I haven't heard very much about this book either. I have seen pictures of this on Instagram and people talking about the book, but not that many that are actually reviewing it. So I'm really curious about it. It sounds really interesting. Another recent aardvark pick was The Tainted Cup by Robert Jackson Bennett. So this says, in D'Artagna's grandest mansion, an imperial officer lies dead, killed to all appearances when a tree erupted from his body. Even here at the Empire's borders, where contagions abound and the blood of the Levithians work strange magical changes, it's a death both terrifying and impossible. Assigned to investigate is Anna Delabra, a detective whose reputation for brilliance is matched only by her eccentricities. Rumor has it that she always wears a blindfold and can solve impossible cases without stepping outside the walls of her home. At her side is her new assistant, Dinios Cole, magically altered in ways that make him the perfect aid to Anna's brilliance. Din is at turns scandalized, perplexed, and infuriated by his new superior, but as the two close in on a mastermind, and Anna makes one startling deduction after the next, he realizes that she is indeed the Empire's greatest detective. So this is giving me Sherlock Holmes vibes, but with like a sprinkling of fantasy elements. I'm really interested in this. I can't say that I love like the Sherlock Holmes type books, but this one does sound really interesting, and I feel like Aardvark usually has pretty good picks. Then I have Big Time by Ben H. Winters. So this was recommended to me in the Poisoned Pen bookstore in Phoenix, and that was part of my road trip across the Southwest. You can find that video up here. This was a book that was universally on almost every single shelf of the staff favorites within the Poisoned Pen. It is very rare that I see every single staff member recommend the same book, and usually when I do, I pay attention. So that was the case here. I picked this one up. Little did I know that I also picked up a signed copy. Grace Burney is a mid-level bureaucrat in the Food and Drug Administration, a woman who once brimmed with purpose but somehow turned into a middle-aged single mom with a dull government job and a melancholy sense that life has passed her by. Until the night, a strange photo comes across her desk of a young woman in a hospital bed who has been subjected to a mysterious procedure. Against orders and against common sense, Grace sets out to bring the girl to safety and finds herself risking her job, her future, and her life on whether she can discover the missing girl before she's captured by an obsessive and violent mercenary who's also searching for her. So this was not a book that was anywhere near my radar. It's not a book that I have seen anything about on bookish social media. The only reason that I found this was, like I said, every single staff member at the Poison Pen recommended it. The lady that was working at the front desk, when she saw I'd picked it up, she was like, oh good, you're gonna love it. It's so interesting. So I'm very excited to try this one out. By the summary, like it sounds interesting, but it doesn't sound like anything that's gonna be exceptional. So I'm hoping that the writing in this is really fantastic. Then we have Garden of Earthly Bodies by Sally Oliver. Kind of a creepy cover for sure. Months after her sister's death, Marianne wakes up to find a growth of thick black hairs along her spine. They defy her attempts to remove them, instead proliferating, growing longer. The hairs, Marianne's doctor tells her, are a reaction to trauma, developed in the wake of the loss of her sister, Maree, and she recommends that Marianne visit Ned, a modern rehabilitation center in a remote forest in Wales, where the patients attend unorthodox therapy sessions and commune with nature. Yet something strange is happening to Marianne and the other patients at Ned. As the hairs on her back continue to grow, the past starts to entangle itself with the present, and the borders of her consciousness threaten to disintegrate. She finds herself drawn back compulsively to the memory of Maree, obsessing over the impulse that drew her sister toward death and splintered her family apart. As these thoughts begin to overwhelm Marianne, Ned offers her release from this cycle of memory and pain, but only at a terrible price, that of identity itself. This sounds super interesting as well. Also another book that I've heard absolutely nothing about, not an author I'm familiar with, but I love this concept of like growing these weird hairs due to trauma, and I'm really looking forward to this. This sounds quirky, eccentric, and right up my alley. Then I have a book by a very well-loved author, and this particular book is very well-loved itself. I have read this author once previous, and that book that I read ended up being a 5-star. So the author I'm talking about is Andy Weir, and the book is Project Hail Mary. So I previously read The Martian for a 5-star prediction collaboration that I did with Lindsay's Little Library and Sarah's Nightstand. You could find that video up here, but The Martian ended up being fantastic. I really enjoyed it. And I hear that Project Hail Mary is even better than The Martian, so I'm super hyped to get into this book. Ryland Grace is the sole survivor on a desperate last chance mission, and if he fails, humanity and Earth itself will perish. Except that right now he doesn't know that. He doesn't even remember his own name, let alone the nature of his assignment or how to complete it. All he knows is that he's been asleep for a very, very long time, and he's just been awakened to find himself millions of miles from home with nothing but 2 corpses for company. His crewmates dead, his memories fuzzily returning, Ryland realizes that an impossible task now confronts him. Hurtling through space on this tiny ship, it's up to him to puzzle out an impossible scientific mystery and conquer an extinction-level threat to our species. I feel like this book speaks for itself. Everyone that I know that's read it raves about it. I haven't heard a bad review of it yet. I love sci-fi. I really enjoy Andy Weir's writing. I expect this to be a 5-star read. And my last 3 books. So a little while back, I received a copy of Horror Movie by Paul Tremblay from William Morrow Publishing. Super excited about that. This is a book that was popping up all over the place a few months ago when it released. It is the perfect book for Halloween. I have yet to read Paul Tremblay. This will be my very first time checking this author out, but I've seen some really fantastic reviews of some of his other books, and I actually saw a really great review of this book in particular recently that has me super hyped to get into it. In June 1993, a group of young guerrilla filmmakers spent 4 weeks making Horror Movie, a notorious disturbing art house horror flick. The weird part, only 3 of the film's scenes were ever released to the public. But Horror Movie has nevertheless grown a rabid fan base. 3 decades later, Hollywood is pushing for a big budget reboot. The man who played the Thin Kid is the only surviving cast member. He remembers all too well the secrets buried within the original screenplay, the bizarre events of the filming, and the dangerous crossed lines on set that resulted in tragedy. As memories flood back in, the boundaries between reality and film, past and present, start to blur. But he's going to help remake the film, even if it means navigating a world of cynical producers, egomaniacal directors, and surreal fan conventions. Demons of the past be damned, but at what cost? Horror Movie is an obsessive, psychologically chilling, and suspenseful feat of storytelling genius that builds inexorably on an unforgettable, mind-bending conclusion. Hey, I mean, I feel like that's a pretty strong statement there at the end, so hopefully this lives up to the hype. Again, I love a good thriller, horror sort of a book, so I'm hoping that this works out for me. Then I have What Comes After by Joanne Tompkins. This is another book that's been on my TBR for a really long time, and I've been meaning to knock off, so hopefully we'll get to it this month. After the shocking death of 2 teenage boys tear apart a community in the Pacific Northwest, an unfamiliar pregnant girl emerges out of the woods and into the lives of those same boys' families. Why the boys died and what their tragedy has to do with this girl are the propulsive mystery at the center of Joanne Tompkins' story. But just as urgent is the question of how the families will move forward. What comes after grief? What does forgiveness look like? So murder mysteries, disappearances, random pregnant girls. Sounds like it'll be an interesting read. Again, thriller elements. Hopefully this will be a thriller that works for me. And my very last selection also comes from Aardvark Book Box, and that is Dreadful by Caitlin Rozakis. This is a book where I'm just not sure what to think about it. I absolutely adore this cover. I think it's so quirky and unique. So this says, it's bad enough waking up in a half-destroyed evil wizard's workshop with no eyebrows, no memories, and no idea how long you have before the dreadlord whoever shows up to murder you horribly, and then turn your skull into a goblet or something. It's a lot worse when you realize that dreadlord whomever is you. Gav isn't really sure how he ended up with a castle full of goblins or why he has a princess locked in a cell. All he can do is play along with his own evil plan in hopes of getting his memories back before he gets himself killed. But as he realizes that nothing, from the incredibly tasteless cloak adorned with flames to the princess, is quite what it seems, Gav must face up to all things that the dreadlord Gavrax has done. And he'll have to answer to the hardest question of all, who does he want to be? This sounds really fun and quirky and interesting. I feel like this is going to be kind of more of a spoof than a real serious book, but I'm hoping that it is a fun ride. So those are all the books on my physical TBR, obviously quite a few. And as per usual, my Netgalley is out of control. So I have a few Netgalley arcs that are also tentatively on the list. So first up, I have The Love Elixir of Augusta Stern by Linda Cohen Loigman. This was a book that was featured by Book of the Month recently. I happened to get an audio copy of it through Netgalley, and this is an author that I'm not super familiar with, but it sounds like it's gonna have kind of witchy historical fiction vibes, so I'm excited about that. I also have American Rapture by CJ Lead. This is being compared to American Gods. American Gods for me was not necessarily my favorite book, but I actually like the concept of it, and I've seen it kind of recreated in other books that I enjoyed more, if that makes sense. So I'm hoping that this will be one of those recreations that I enjoy. Then I have Sorcery and Small Magics by Mega Ducey. This is a book that I think I talked about in my Book of the Month predictions for October. It's one that sounds really interesting. It's kind of got those magical vibes that are perfect for the fall. So I may get to this one this month. Then I also have The City in Glass by Niveau. This is another book that I mentioned in my October Book of the Month predictions, which you can find up here. This is a book about an angel and a demon and the fall of a city, and it sounds really interesting. I love Vo's writing. I've read quite a few of the things that she's written. This in particular sounds really interesting to me. Then I have Model Home by River Solomon. So I really enjoy River Solomon's writing. I've read 2 of their books, and honestly, I don't even know what this one's about. The cover is neon green, and it says it's by River Solomon. So that was the deciding factor in asking for a copy of this. I'm pretty sure that I'm going to enjoy this. I'm pretty sure that it's going to be thought-provoking, and I'm pretty sure there's going to be some creepy aspects of it. I am very much a fan of Solomon's work, so I expect to enjoy this. And then I have a copy of Curdle Creek by Yvonne Battle Felton. This is a straight horror, and it sounds really interesting. This book has been making the rounds lately. I've been hearing some good buzz for it, and I'm really looking forward to jumping into it. I have Haunt Sweet Home by Sarah Pinsker. This is a book that I'm not super familiar with, but it is a short horror novella, and it sounds like it'll be fun. I have Dearest by Jackie Walters, which I believe I talked about in my Book of the Month predictions for September, maybe. This is a horror novel about a woman in her house and some things going on that are kind of creepy. The cover of this is super creepy, and it sounds like it's going to be a really good fall, Halloween type of a read. And finally, I have another audio copy of a book by T. Kingfisher, and that's A Sorceress Comes to Call. This was a recent feature by Book of the Month, one that I've been hearing decent reviews of, and it also is giving me those fall vibes. It's got kind of those fantasy fairy tale elements, so hopefully I'll really enjoy this one as well. So those are just a handful of the books on my Netgalley shelf, but again, I'm picking the ones that fit the theme that I'm reading for October. Hopefully I'll make it through a few of those as well. So that is the end of my October TBR. Hopefully you found this interesting. If you did, hit the thumbs up button, comment down below, and let me know what you're reading in October. Like I mentioned at the beginning, I want to hear all about what's going on in your reading world. And also, if you read any of the books that are on my TBR, please tell me about them. Did you love them? Did you hate them? Just no spoilers, please. But anything else aside from spoiler content, and I'd be happy to hear about it. And if you're not already subscribed to this channel, you know what to do. Hit the subscribe button down below, as well as the notification bell, so that you never miss a video. And that way we can see each other again soon. Thanks so much for joining. Bye.